This is going to be kind of a 2-for-1 video. For one thing, I'm going to do a review of this 1/4 inch Capri double flare tool. And I'm also going to just show you a little bit about the brake lines I've run on my truck. So the first thing you want to do, you want to make sure that when you cut this tubing, that you deburr it on the inside and outside nice, where it's nice and smooth and there's no pieces of metal hanging off. This is copper nickel brake tube, so it's not copper. I know it looks like copper, but it's copper nickel, which is supposed to be stronger and better, and it's supposed to last pretty much forever. So we'll see. So the first thing you want to do, you want to make sure you take these two little screws out here. And you can take this off the handle and use it in a vise too if you want, but this one, since I'm doing it on the truck. So first things first, pull that off. Make sure that your surfaces around in here are nice and clean. And same thing on this other piece here, which this guy comes out. Make sure that's all nice and clean. No grease, no metal, no nothing. And then that's step 1. Step 2 is to put this back together a little bit. Make sure that this nut right here, this little nut, is in here nice and straight, square. It's not very difficult to get it nice and straight and square. Then you want to just run these screws right here. Just run them in just before they touch, really. Then you'll slide it over your tubing, and if you look here, there's a line there and a hole. You'll see your tubing come across. I go ahead and just push the tubing right on past that line just a little bit, but leave it in view in that hole. Then there's this piece here. So what you do is you screw this in. I'm going to tighten these two screws here just a little bit more, just so that it doesn't move too freely. Then you run that in, and I find it better just to run it in and tighten it as tight as you can with your fingers. Then grab the tubing and the handle and just kind of give this a push. Make sure that tubing is seated flush against the surface that you can see in that hole. Okay, then tighten up your two little screws. This is a 10 millimeter, and I just tighten them up evenly until they're good and tight. They don't have to be stupid tight, but they need to be pretty snug. Okay, when you do that, this nut usually tightens up a little bit, and you got to use a wrench to get it out. It's a 17 millimeter. Then you get your die here. Now, it's got two ends on it. This end here, I've got grease in it, and just a little bit of grease, because they supply grease with this thing, so I'm using that grease. But this side here makes a bubble flare. So you put this in and you tighten it up, you take it back out, and that's OP1. That makes a bubble flare. Then when you take it out, you put some grease on this end and turn it around and put it in, and then that makes your double flare. So we'll start with this. I don't know how this tool would work on like stainless steel or even just carbon steel. And it's not the fastest tool in the world, but if you only need to make a few flares here and there, then it really isn't too bad. Okay, that's snug, so then you back it out. I know you can't see in there, but it just made a good, nice bubble flare. Now I'll put just a little bit of grease around this other side. Just grease that up just a little bit. It don't take a shit ton, just a little bit. And stick it in here. And it'll screw in pretty far, but not all the way. And then that's all there is to it. Then you just take, you loosen these two screws here. Seems like when you use this thing, everything gets tighter than what you left it. You tighten it up and then you use it and it gets, everything just tightens up that much more. And I take and I clean this head every flare. So if I just made this flare, I would go clean it before I made another flare. But let's see how it looks. Just wipe the grease off. Okay, so I'm going to take you off the stand. Let's see if I can show you. Let's see. Focus. You know, it's hard to see it, but it looks pretty decent. It's a pretty good looking flare. Don't forget when you're doing this to make sure that you got your nut on there before you flare it, because that sucks if you don't. But what I'm going to show you though, the package looks like this. And this is the back side, you know, it goes in here like so. The instructions are right here on the back of the packaging. I don't know why they put it on the back of the packaging, but once you read the instructions and you see how it's done, you really can't forget. Now, the quarter I'm kind of impressed with. I think it did a pretty good job. But I want to show you the 3/16. Sometimes I've had to redo a few of these because I don't like the way the 3/16 tool, it looks identical to that. I don't like the way that these flares look. Let's see if we can get it to focus. I don't know what the difference is between the 3/16. There you go. See, look at that. I'm just going to turn it. See how it makes that weird crease on the bottom side, and it kind of brings it up into the top there. See that? I'm not impressed with that. And on top of that, you know, if you look across the flare like this, sometimes it's not flat. It's got like a flat, a spot that's lower than the rest of it. So I don't know how that's going to seal or work. You see how that one's kind of got a lump on one side. This is a 3/16. This is also copper nickel. But to be honest, I'm not that impressed with the 3/16 one. I don't know if maybe I just got a bad one, you know, one that got some kind of flaw in it. I've taken it apart. It looks good. It looks okay. It looks like it should work. It looks the same as the quarter. But the quarter makes a much nicer flare than the 3/16. So honestly, I don't really recommend the 3/16. The quarter seems to be a lot better and do a lot better job. It makes a nicer, much nicer flare. And yeah. Now after I deburr and flare my tubing, what I always do, I always come down to the other end. And let's see if I can do this. I've got this line taken loose here. I'm just going to blow some air through there. If I can. Show you. Just letting it go. See that? That way I know that I've got a nice clean line. That looks good. Okay, so for now, let's see if I can focus on that. That looks pretty nice. Pretty clean. Pretty flat. I think that's going to work. Now, I have disc brakes on here. I've put disc brakes on, and this proportioning valve is supposed to be for four-wheel disc brakes for this truck. Now, I bought that from LMC, so I don't know how good it's going to be, but I bought it from LMC. It's supposed to be for four-wheel disc brakes, and it goes right in the stock location. Everything hooks up in the stock way it's supposed to. So that is kind of a plus. Hopefully it works properly. But I've got my brake line there hooked up. I've got the one coming off for the right side. That clamp right there is just loose right now. I brought it up here. Now the only thing is, you kind of got to make, I bought a bending tool, and I'll go ahead and review that too. This tubing bender is also from Capri. I'll tell you right now, that's where that goes. It's garbage. Don't even waste your money on that. It was cheap and it was junk. Okay, now, I did all this with just my hands because that tubing bender sucks. And the thing of it is these flare tools, if you look right here, let's see if I can show you. Come on, focus. Anyway, right there where the end of my thumb is where the tool stops. So if you need to make a real tight bend, like up under here, you can't bend it and fit it up and then flare it. It can't be done because it won't fit in the flare tube, or in the flare tool. So you have to flare it and then make your bends, which is why this one is still pretty much straight. I've got to put it in the clamp down there and then run it up and join it there. This I don't really like, but I don't know how else to do it and get a nice straight shot into the fitting here. But this is about the best I could do and about the shortest I can make it, using this flare tool and bending it with my hands. This particular line, this is what they call 4 lifetime lines. I bought this off of Amazon. It's supposed to be good stuff. However, bending it with your hand, if you need to make a tight bend, it kind of flattens out. Like this bend right here, if you look, it's kind of tries to flatten out. So you can only make them so tight, and it'll try to kink on you. So there's another brand, I think it's called SURS. It's made in America. It's copper nickel, or it's supposed to be copper nickel, and they supposedly bend very, very well by hand. Like you can twist them around each other and they won't kink. Now, is that true? I don't know. If I had it to do over again, I would buy the SURS instead of this 4 lifetime lines Chinese garbage. But it's supposed to be good. It's supposed to be high pressure, You should never have a problem with it. It's just doesn't bend very well, and it doesn't straighten very well either. But I got the left side hooked up, and I got the right side hooked up, and then I started at the back running the rear line, but I'll just show you so far what I've got. And just put it through that clamp there, run it down, run it flat on the bottom of the frame rail under there. Under the motor mount bracket. Okay, so then I came, yeah, it's not, got a clamp right there, and a clamp right there. So that's where I'm at with the brakes. I'll do a separate video on the disc brakes. Thanks for watching. If you got anything out of it at all, like, share, subscribe. Update. So, as I said, these lines are easy to kink, especially when you're bending them with your hands and not a bender. So what happened was, I was trying to get this fitting in. I had it bent to where it come around like this and went down here with this lower one down here and went through this clamp here, because this was built really for both of these pieces of tubing. And then it would come out here, it would come up, and then over and into this fitting. Well, when I was working on the very last bend, I had it flared, I had it all ready to go. I was working on the very last bend, and the stupid thing kinked on me. So, what I did was I cut it right behind the kink, as close as I could get. And I put a different clamp on at the top, and I ran it straight across and straight into the fitting. It doesn't look nearly as pretty, but that's what happens. So I don't really recommend these 4 lifetime lines. They don't flare good, they don't bend good, they kink easy. If you're going to go that route, I would just go ahead and do stainless or OEM material, which is like a carbon steel with some kind of coating on it. But I would do that over this 4 lifetime lines nonsense. But seriously, you might look into, I believe it's SURS is the brand, I believe. It's made in the United States, and they wrapped it up. They took 2 pieces, like this, and wrapped them around each other, like tight, and they didn't kink. And you're supposed to be able to bend them with your hands, and you don't need a bender, and they're supposed to flare good and bend well and not give you a bunch of problems. So that's what I ended up with, and I'm not really crazy about that either, but I didn't have no choice there. And that one's not so bad. So that's the update. So be careful, like, share, subscribe, all the things if you got anything at all out of this.